Here's my cat.
Old royalty.
Yeah, Kim's
my
cat. Kim's cat should count. Okay, so let's go. Do we have any outside folks? There shouldn't be any today, should there, Michaela?
No, there's no one yet. I'll let you all know if someone starts watching.
Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and call to order. Not that I know you don't all want to stay on the phone all evening. Now, this is the part where I know that, you wait every time for me to get to speak this, but this is the Places 29 Hydraulic Community Advisory Committee September meeting. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with Emergency Order number 20-A6, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. The CAC members that we have present: Tony Wayne, Bill Love, Michelle Busby, John Neal, Vito Chetta, Kim Swanson. Did I say Bill Love? Anyway, I think that's all of our.
I'm also here, Rosemary Miller.
Oh yes, I didn't even see you. Hey, welcome. We're glad
Thank you. I'll turn my video on in a second. I have a baby on my lap.
Well, that's better.
Here you go.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
That's even cuter than Kim's cat.
My husband will come snag him in a second, but I'm here.
Oh, that's great. And then the county staff and other speakers present, we have Steve Saunders, Kate Acuff, who am I missing? Andy Raubach, and Carolyn Schaefer, and then of course Julian and Diantha. Anyway, the Places Hydraulic CAC and Albemarle County Community Development Department are responsible for receiving public comment. Thank you to everyone that is participating online and over the phone and Zooming. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar located at Albemarle County, blah, 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 blah. During the Q&A portion of this meeting, we invite you to share your comments or questions by using the raise hand tool at the bottom of your screen. So I think that does it, unless anybody has any questions. Oh, look, and it's Jim Heilman. He popped in while I wasn't looking. Last month's meeting was recorded and is uploaded to the Albemarle County YouTube page. We do have, Rosemary is our fabulous new secretary, and we're trying to figure out what we need to do to take notes again so we can actually really review the minutes. So I think that our first thing that I wanted to do was to change the agenda a bit for, we've added something, right, Michaela?
Right. We have Jaunt joining us at the end. They're not here yet as speakers. They're going to join in a little bit, but they're going to do a presentation on their on-demand services at the end. We actually were planning to end the meeting a little early, and so it works out to have them join us.
We decided not to. We decided to have Brad Sheffield come and talk a bit about Jaunt because he's involved with so much stuff, and we had managed to book them. Oh, wow. And we now have Tori and Jane Fogelman have joined. So our first speaker is Kate Acuff, who is our resident genius on the school board. You've been doing this for a while, haven't you?
This is my 7th year.
Yeah, no, that's great. So anyway, she's going to share her screen and provide a brief update on the Albemarle County schools. CAC members and any members of the public are asked to ask any questions for them in the presentation, then we'll do Q&A. But did you have charts that you wanted to share?
I do.
Or did you
I
want
can't get out of this.
Michaela to do it?
Yeah, I do want, I've screwed up my screen now. Let's see, share screen. Back to speaker view. How do I get this? Hang on. Okay. Can people see this screen? I can't see anybody.
Nope.
No.
No.
Michaela, do you have them?
Yes.
I'm happy to pull that up if
Could you? I mean,
Yeah.
I know that this is first time I've done it, and I know it's,
No, it's a little tricky. It's no problem. Let
Here
me,
we are.
Michaela is a veritable genius.
I wouldn't go that far.
Hey,
Very helpful.
Can you see this?
yes, lovely.
Thank
Take
you.
it away,
Nicole.
Kate.
I thought I would just briefly go over some of the things that are happening at Albemarle schools, and Steve Saunders is here. I'm going to do the big overview, and Steve is going to talk about what it looks like from the school level. The next one. You may have heard a lot this summer that we were thinking about some sort of hybrid learning, which is of essential because A, we don't have enough buses and we don't have enough classroom space to deal with the social distancing that's required. It became clear this summer, because of the greatly fluctuating COVID prevalence levels and growing concern about the return of 10 to 20,000 UVA students, we voted at the end of July. We adopted a 5-stage protocol for opening our schools, with stage 1 being completely closed, practically like we were in March, and stage 5 going back to pre-pandemic. As part of this protocol, each quarter we can move to a different stage, depending upon the external circumstances. But we did vote in July, end of July, to open 2 weeks late and open in stage 2. Stage 2 is almost all of our 14,000 students are virtual, with the exceptions that certain students may opt to come into the buildings. And these are some of our special education students. Those higher level English language learners, meaning that they're beginning to read for content and it's helpful to have someone teaching them how. And students without access to high-speed internet can come and have their instruction in the buildings. Stage 3, which you may have read in the newspapers this weekend, is the next stage we might consider. Under this protocol, Dr. Haas, the superintendent, is obligated to make a recommendation halfway through a term about whether we should move to another stage or stay where we are. And that's what they're looking at right now. Stage 3 would be bringing back with optional students in kindergarten through 3rd grade may go to have school-based instruction 2 days a week. These are our probably most vulnerable kids to virtual education. And there's a lot of concern about how they're doing on virtual. Stage 4 would be then adding high school and middle school students. And then stage 5 would be like before the pandemic, although we're finding some of the virtual options our students like, and we may want to have a virtual option package for at least some of our classes going forward. Michaela? This is basically what I just said, with the exception that whatever stage we're in, the superintendent can shut down the school or go back to a lower level, lower stage. Next one. When we do have in-school instruction, all teachers, staff, and students must wear masks both in the transportation and in the schools at all times, except when eating or drinking and are socially distanced. We will have some spare masks available, but we're urging our staff and students to bring their own. I have to say, what some people, I think some of our community haven't quite understood, there's 55 million K through 12 students across the country, and we're all competing for resources. So we, just to hedge our bets, we had ordered our masks from 4 different vendors to make sure we had enough. Hand sanitizers will be available throughout schools. Social distancing will be the norm. We won't be routinely COVID testing, but we will have quarantine rooms, and we can send students out to be tested. And all of our schools have full-time nurses on site. Next. Clearly, to have any kind of virtual instruction, you need to have all your students with some sort of device. We were ahead of many school divisions because we already had one-to-one computing down to 3rd grade, and we had passed 2 years ago a program to have tablets available in K through 2nd for 2 students per device. So we were still short of devices, but we were way ahead of a lot of other school divisions. We ordered immediately, well, almost immediately, in July, we ordered 1,660 additional tablets with greater capacity than we normally use. Unfortunately, this was not a novel idea, and Apple was completely sold out across the country. So we had to wait for a shipment from China, and then 2 weeks after quarantine. So we received these devices last Monday, and our staff, IT staff, and volunteers from every place, including transportation, helped inventory, and then the IT people loaded the software, and they were distributed, and Steve can talk to this. To my understanding, they were sent out to the schools midweek last week to be distributed to families. In addition to the devices, of course, is the access to high-speed internet. And we're a big county. There are commercial vendors that there are areas of the county that are not of any interest to commercial vendors. We have been working on this. We have distributed, the number is actually 1,150 hotspots to families who are at least on the edge of getting access. We are working with vendors who have a program for if lower income is the issue, to pay for those low income programs, and we will pay the cost of that. Even so, not all students have access, and they may opt to come into the schools. And they're the majority of the students who have decided to come into the schools to get their instruction. Some of these kids, unfortunately, are homeless kids, so they come into the school. Next one. We have lost students in terms of enrollment. This is looking, we have school by school numbers, but that was way too much. Overall, last year we started with 14,032 students, and we usually get 200 to 300 more students every year. So the 2021 projection was 14,236. As of September 9th, the second day of school, we had 1,315 students, which represents a real drop of about 5% in enrollment. But if you look at it, what we projected we would have, it's almost a 7% drop in enrollment. If you look a little closer at the numbers, you'll see that's 2/3 of the drop in enrollment are elementary school kids, which are the ones who probably have the most difficulty navigating in virtual instruction. And of the elementary kids, half of them are kindergartners or would have been kindergartners. So maybe those parents are keeping them in pre-K a bit longer, or in any rate, they're maybe delaying kindergarten for a year. We just don't know. We didn't see much of a change in the upper grades. We haven't seen that. We don't know yet about attendance. It's just too early to be able to figure that out. I asked today, and that will be coming in the next few weeks. The next, I think, is that the last one? One more. Broadly, there's obviously budget considerations, and I don't have any numbers here for you, but our COVID expenditures was substantially more than the CARES Act revenues. We had to buy PPE, other equipment, technology, our computers, hotspots, etc. And last I knew, it was about $2 million more than the CARES Act. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but we do have some additional expenditures. We have kept our extended day enrichment program, because teachers and staff may need childcare to be able to come into the schools to do their work. This is a program that normally is self-financed, meaning it has to cover its own costs. And so far it isn't. We don't have enough kids enrolled, but it's important to keep the program going because we get about a 30% turnover in staff every year, even in normal times. So if we didn't, we would have to drop the program altogether. The big hit we're going to get, in addition to greater expenditures, is the lower average daily enrollment numbers of about 920 kids. Multiply that by about $3,000, and that's a drop in state revenue. There is some lobbying by school divisions all over the state because everybody is seeing these numbers, to have a hold harmless for enrollment for this year, but that has not passed so far. But so we have greater expenditures and lower revenues so far going forward. And that's all I have. And I know Steve has
Yeah,
what does this
that was
look
great.
like at the school level?
So let's hold, I'm sure somebody has a question, but let's hold and let Steve. I mean, don't you wish that we were all sitting in the little library there by the front door? That would be so nice. Anyway, welcome, Steve. You want to make a few comments and take it from here?
Sure. I can talk. Thanks, Kate and Cynthia. So we timely reference about the iPads and coming in from the Department of Technology. We have a crew outside right now here at Greer giving those out to first and second grade families. We've been doing tech deployments since March. We were waiting until these iPads came in to give those out to first and second graders. Before they came in, we were using we were using laptops, old laptops for kids, but we know that developmentally for the age range of kindergarten through second, iPads are a better feature for them, a better platform. So I can talk about any of the topics Kate talked about broadly. I can talk about it at Greer specifically. The things that I wonder if people are interested in are around what Greer's enrollment looks like. And then some of the things that make us unique. What does that look like in a pandemic around students who are new to the country and things like that? So for us, our projected enrollment numbers are usually generated around October, November, and then they kind of hold steady. And so the last numbers I had were from February, so they're obviously before the pandemic, but we were anticipated to be about 462 students at Greer kindergarten through fifth grade. As of today, we're at 432. So we see a drop of about 30. But one of the things that we know happens in our urban ring is that we have kids come in and out pretty frequently. And so since the first day of school, we've had about 36 students start and about 5 leave. Some of the students who are missing out of our 30 off of the enrollment projection. We dug into that as you might expect. And again, the projection numbers are pre-pandemic, so they're a completely different set of scenarios. But for us, of kids who we anticipated being here, we have about 11 or so in homeschool. We lost a handful to private schools. We lost around 10 to transfers internally within Albemarle County, and then we lost about 20 to schools outside of Albemarle County. So we see a pretty transient pattern there, which, to be honest, has fit Greer's 10-year trend that I've looked at for many years. We will anticipate coming about 100 kids will come in who will be unique to us during an academic year, and we might lose 85 also. So we might gain 15, 20 from September to June, but we might have uniquely new 100 kids before a pandemic. And so we'll see what that looks like during this time. The last thing I'll say, just kind of in opening comments, is that we know that one of the things that makes Greer special is that about 40% of our students are new to the country and don't speak English as a mother tongue. And so one of the things that's raised with us is communications with families. And so we have a variety of things that we do to reach out to our families. We have about 40 spoken languages here. When you include home languages and not just what the students speak. Are you all familiar with a program called Interpret Talk? Have you heard about this before? Is that something that the county government knows about? Okay, so if we have a language on staff, somebody on staff who speaks the language, obviously we use them when we can. We also, the county has an ESOL department, an ESOL office where we can use some of their staff, particularly for Spanish. Then we also will hire live interpreters. Somebody either in a Zoom setting or even in person will come and we'll do interpretation. And so I'll pay for that out of my operating budget. But there's a program called, we call it Interpret Talk. It's technically called Language Service Associates, but it's a on-demand phone-based live interpretation. And so you call, I'll call a number, tell them a language like Russian, they'll connect me with a third-party call to a Russian translator or interpreter. And then we will call a parent and have a 3-way phone call on demand in about 80 different languages that we have. That program, as you imagine, is really a lifesaver for us in the moment, and talking with families in Hindi and Nepali and Russian and some languages that we don't have on staff. But there's a cost associated with it, as you might imagine. So we pay anywhere between 50 cents in a minute to $1 a minute for those costs. And obviously we've seen that grow exponentially over the last month or so. But those are just kind of some quick highlights from our end. We know that those conversations are so critical, both for families in normal times, but also during this time. And so we've done a lot around communication with families, both in written format through a program called Remind. We bought the professional version of that allows us to do on-demand translation for written communications, but also through Interpret Talk. So that's a quick snapshot of some of the things at Greer right now. We can answer any questions you might have about other topics as well.
And let me just throw in, just so people know, because there's so much discussion right now around connectivity and what the pandemic has shown about connectivity with internet. And we do have next month, we've asked the school division and county government to come and talk to us about connectivity challenges and how that's been playing out, just so everybody that's attending the meeting knows that that's going to happen.
Well, that's great.
Just to add a little bit to what Steve said, Greer was close to Diantha's in my heart because it's in our district, of course, but it's also, I think, one of our greatest schools, but it's also a school with extraordinary challenges. We've got about a third white, a third black, a third Hispanic. I don't know what the numbers are this year, but it's 75 to 78% eligible for free and reduced cost lunches. These children are, I think it's one of the hardest cases because these are the kids that are most at risk academically, and they are also most at risk from COVID, they and their families. And that is a challenge that we are trying to work on. One other bit, if you look across the schools, I'll wrap it up, Cynthia. If you look across the schools that have lost the most students or had the biggest enrollment drop are the higher income schools. For example, we had Greer, we had maybe a 10% drop, and Meriwether Lewis, it was double that. And so maybe they have more options about where to go. I don't know.
Yeah, the one of the board members of Tandem School told me, it's so unusual. Our population really grew of children. I thought, anyway, I agree with you. Greer is the best school. You know, it's like, it's the real deal. But we need to move on, and we have Jim Heilman. Now, if you don't know Jim Heilman, this guy has been causing trouble in this town for decades, but he's a legend. And now he's one of the most sane but crazy people on that makes sure that all of our voting, you know, matters. I mean, isn't this like a full-time job now, given this current election? Anyway,
Right.
he's a wonderful guy. He's been, you know, good to nonprofits I've worked with. He participates in the community. He cares a lot. And he, I think, is going to kill himself if we don't have a successful election, at least by working too hard. So Jim, what's going on?
Well, first, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, because I'm on a netbook that I've never been on before. You, the full-time job? Yeah, I'm actually coming to you from Cape Charles, Virginia, on the Eastern Shore, where I tried to take a 2-day vacation, but I'm on with you all tonight, so no vacationing at all. Hello, Bill Love, who thanks his lucky stars every day that he's retired from the electoral board. Hello, Diantha. Julian Bivens, haven't seen you in forever, but good to see you there.
And Brad Sheffield? Brad Sheffield?
And Brad Sheffield, hello. So good to be with you all. I just wanted to talk for a few minutes about what's going on with the election, and then ask if you can think of some ways that you or your neighborhood association or anyone else might be able to help. So we are in a perfect storm of an election. All presidential elections are storms, but this one especially so. Partially because we have a whole raft of new laws that we have to deal with and implement, some of which only passed a couple of weeks ago, and we have just no guidance from the state on how to implement these, so we're kind of making it up, building the airplane as we fly it. Of course, there are certain voices out there that are saying that mail ballots are fraudulent, and there are other voices that saying you can't trust the U.S. mail to get mail ballots to you. And then over top of everything, we have COVID. So it is an election to be remembered, hopefully fondly, but I'm not totally sure about that. But we're doing everything within our power to make sure that they are. So first I wanted to mention voter registration. Voter registration, normally around this time, we see a big spike in voter registration before a presidential election. And we're not seeing that. It is picking up somewhat, but nobody can be out there really doing voter registration drives or going to concerts and registering people and that type of thing. So we're not seeing that spike, but we really want to get people registered who aren't, particularly those that have turned 18 or are turning 18 by November 3rd. So how do you get registered? Well, you can go to the registrar's office. Even though in the county the building is closed, you can call in on an intercom and someone will come out, bring you registration forms. You can register all sorts of government offices, but most of them are closed too, including one of the biggest ones is the DMV, and I believe still you can't go to the DMV without having an appointment. So the easiest way to do it is online. And I didn't say hi to Diantha, who's heard my spiel before. You're going to get to do the one next time. So I have for you my very high-tech digital graphic, which is, everybody see it?
Yeah.
vote.elections.virginia.gov. And that takes you to the site where you can not only register to vote, but also very importantly, check your registration and make sure it's up to date. Because people do a lot of moving, and there are a lot of people that only vote in presidential elections. Well, if you moved 2 years ago, depending on where you move, and there are a whole lot of complicated rules that govern this, you may not be eligible to vote come November 3rd unless you have updated that registration. October 13th is the deadline for updating your registration information and for registering to vote. So we really hope people will know about this deadline. We're trying to get the word out in any way as we can. But then we come to the 3 different ways to vote. You can vote early in person. You can vote early by mail. Now, both of those in the past we've always called absentee voting. I don't even like that term anymore because it doesn't really apply, although it's still out there. And then, of course, you can vote at the polls on election day. The Albemarle County Electoral Board has taken the position that we strongly encourage Albemarle County voters to vote early, either in person or by mail, to avoid long lines at polling places on November 3rd. However, we want to assure people that all 30 of our polling places will be open on November 3rd for voting, and that we are making our best efforts possible to make sure that those polling places are safe and clean, i.e. COVID protection. Now, to talk about the 3 different ways to vote, I guess I'll talk about early in person first. Early in person voting started on Friday, and we had 709 people show up. We have one place to vote early in person, and that is at the county office building on 5th Street. We've taken over half the building so that we can have a functioning polling place there. We had 709 people come on Friday. We opened at 8:30. We had a couple that were in line at 5:50 a.m. They were determined to be the first people to vote, and I made up a certificate of appreciation for that. We're happy to get that. So it was a very busy day. I called into the office a couple of hours ago to see how things were going, and we have pretty much a similar number of people today. So we're very busy there. The hours for early in-person voting are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8:30 to 5, Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 5, and Thursday from 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we have some extended hours there. Also voting on the last 2 Saturdays before the election, we will be doing early voting. Now, mail-in voting, people started getting, about a month ago, mail-in voting applications. And they were getting them from something called the Voter Information Center. And they were pre-filled out with your name and address and a prepaid return envelope. Did any of you all get those? Raise your hand. See, some did. Yeah, okay. And there was a lot of talk back then, are these fraudulent? No, they're not fraudulent, they're just fine. They're a well-meaning organization. They made some mistakes on the registrar's addresses, but around here, I think they got everything right. So I'm actually going to use one myself. So if you all have those, there's no problem at all with using them, and they have a prepaid envelope, so they're very, very easy to do. Just remember to sign. But mail-in voting, gosh, 4 years ago, presidential election, about this time, we had maybe 1,000 requests for a mail application. Friday, we mailed out, Thursday and Friday of last week, we mailed out over 17,000 ballots to people who had requested them. And
We got about half of those back today at the polls, I think.
What's that?
I think I worked the polls today as an observer, and I think we got a bunch of those 17,000 in today. That was our biggest piece of business, was people bringing in their mail ballots because they want to vote in person. And several of them mentioned vote, the Lionel Drips one, because they didn't trust it.
Mhm. So yeah, people are doing it by mail, and that's great. And I trust the U.S. Postal Service. I know some that ballots that were mailed out on Friday were received by people on Saturday. That was one-day turnaround by the Postal Service. So I think the people in our post offices are absolutely doing everything they can to get any mail that shows that it's a ballot or a request for a ballot, to get it out there as soon as possible. So the mail-in ballot system is working just fine. The deadline for requesting a mail-in ballot is October 23rd, and that should give people enough time to get it back to us. Normally, up until this year, the law has always been anything that we receive by 7 p.m. on election night counts. Anything that comes in after that does not count. That law has changed. Now, anything that we get up until Friday, November 6th after the election, Friday by noon, we're going to be counting. That means we're going to be counting ballots Wednesday after the election, Thursday after the election, and Friday after the election. So what you see as results on election night are not going to be the total results for Albemarle County. Cynthia brought up something that I do want to address, and that is people that requested an absentee ballot and then come in to vote in person. They can do that, but they have to vote a provisional ballot if they don't have their mail ballot with them. And we had 125 people come in on Friday. I don't know how many the total was today. They said, well, I hadn't gotten my mail ballot. Well, yeah, because they weren't supposed to be sent until Friday, and they weren't sent Friday. So those people have to vote a provisional ballot. What I'm trying to urge people to do is don't come until if you apply for one of those, don't come until you have it in hand. And then you can either mail it back or you can bring it back to us, either while we're working or at the drop box, which is right outside the Fifth Street office building. You can just put it in there. And that saves a lot of effort. Provisional balloting is time consuming for both the election officers and the voters. So we really want people to do that. We hope that those folks coming in like that's going to drop off as people do get their ballots. They should, anybody that applied anytime up until the end of last week should be getting their ballot by tomorrow or Wednesday. So in-person works, mail ballot works, and if people want to wait and come on election day, that works too. But we are hoping to keep down those lines on election day so that we can keep the sanitization process going that we have in place. We have a pandemic plan for all of our polling places to make them as safe as possible, just like we do for the county office building for the early in-person voting going on. With that, I would like to see what questions you have, and also, Bill Love has a question.
Probably has the answer too, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I have an amusing observation and then a serious question. I'm one of those folks. I got my ballot on Saturday, marked it, took it in today, put it in that drop box. So I voted, got my sticker on. But it's interesting, on my official ballot envelope that I received, and also the one that was to be mailed back if I had mailed it, they put the number of our precinct, 203, correct. But instead of saying Georgetown precinct, it says No Town precinct. So I think we prefer to stick with Georgetown precinct. So that's my comment.
Maybe I'll call Jake about that, Bill.
He probably noticed it, but anyway. My serious question is this. So I watched the video that Michael Rodemeyer did on the website about voting by mail, and that one option you mentioned right at the end that said a person could bring in their completed absentee ballot to a polling place on election day and drop it off. The official vote by mail instructions that came in with the ballot, on the back, there's a big box with a border around it, do not, and there's two bullet things. One of them is do not ask someone to deliver your ballot on your behalf, which is fine. The second one says, do not drop off your completed vote by mail ballot in a polling place on election day. Doing either of these will cancel your ballot. So that is obviously conflicting advice. And I think it needs to be put out there, the correct answer given, because what I'm afraid of is some people will say, well, we'll just wait to take our ballots in. And then the night before the election, they open it up and they see that they can't deliver it according to this to a polling place and they panic. So somehow that needs to be straightened out. It needs to be corrected.
Well, one problem we have with the law changes, some of them changed after the instructions were already printed and already stuffed into envelopes. And so we have various things like that. One is witness requirement.
Yep.
There is no witness requirement.
And they have to swear that that they had a witness.
Yeah, there is no witness requirement anymore. Anybody can take their mail ballot, completed mail ballot, and drop it off at any polling place on election day. Any polling place they can drop it off because they all are serving as drop-off points for those ballots. We're also hoping to have some drop-off centers, we're going to call them. We don't have drop boxes except the one in front of the Fifth Street office building, but we hope in the last 2 weeks to use some school parking lots, probably Albemarle High School, Brownsville, Walton, I can't remember which else, that will be staffed. We'll have humans there sitting under a tent. People can come drop off those mail-in ballots. So that's something that'll be a little bit different. Also, while I'm thinking of it, yeah, if you look at the albemarle.org website, we're putting up videos about how to do things. And the one that's been up there now for a week or so is how to correctly complete a mail ballot and send it back in. It seems like it would be very simple, but because so many people have never done this before, they make mistakes. And there's also a new law that if they do make mistakes, like they forget to sign the envelope that has the oath saying that I filled out my ballot, your ballot's inside, or they put the wrong address in, we are supposed to give people the opportunity to cure those mistakes. And we are still awaiting guidance from the state on how to do that. I saw a hand from, oh, Rosemary. Oh,
Hello,
Rosemary, I didn't realize that was you.
that's me. I just have a logistics question about whether or not you're going to have drive-up voting. I know that that is like legally required, but I know at the primaries we did drive-up voting with my kids in the car, which was super fun, but I'm debating if I'm voting early, if I should bring kids or not. If it's an easy thing, but if you're overwhelmed, I'm not really offering drive-up voting as like
yeah, drive-up voting we call curbside voting. You don't have to get out of your car. Yes, we are doing that for anyone. The
Okay.
law says that you have to be disabled or 65 or over in order to do curbside voting. We have made a decision. The state basically made it back to the June primaries. It hasn't been mentioned for the November election, but we have made the decision that because of COVID, everyone is technically disabled because of concern about COVID. So we are allowing anyone to do a curbside vote. In fact, we encourage them.
But it's
Right,
one of the things that's really nice, Rosemary, is that there's two people at all times, you know, on the election officer's staff who, and the first one is out in the parking lot as cars are coming in and they find out what your need is and they bring in the curbside stuff so the people actually working the poll books don't have to leave what they're doing, you know. So it's really, it's one of the better systems I've seen.
Yeah, it was very smooth at the primaries, but I didn't want to cause extra logistical you know, make it easy for the poll workers as possible.
No, we're very happy for you to do it curbside. A little bit more work, but that's all right.
John, do you have a question? No, you were just exercising your hand. Anybody else? Diana?
Can I just ask quickly, Jim, where do you all stand on people to work the polls? We know that way back when you were saying you were concerned you were going to be shorthanded. Are you okay right now?
We are okay right now, yeah.
I
Two,
was
3 months ago, I
waitlisted.
was sweating bullets about whether we were going to have enough people to work because, as you all know, many of our election officers are elderly and don't want to work. But people started coming out of the woodwork. I started putting together a plan to how to recruit people. Well, now we don't have to recruit people because they've been coming from all over, and now we're actually telling people no. Please hold off, or we'll put you on a waiting list. But right now we're looking really good
I mean,
for November. But we're
if I
still,
understand that you guys had today, I mean, there's a lot of people at Fifth Street, but today, all but one turned over at 1 o'clock. And it was messy. We should talk about it. It's just like, because you have all these people that had a great system, they, kind of knew, and then it turned over and there was all new people except for one person.
yeah, we recognize that the changing of shifts is a little bit bumpy right now. And
Yes, it is.
We're going to on that. But one thing I want to ask you all, as I said, we really need to get the word out to people about the 3 different ways that you can vote, and about the registration deadline, and about the mail vote deadline. And I'm trying to target various groups: UVA students, high school students, the Latinx community, the African American community, and the public at large, through a variety of newsletters, PSAs, whatever, just interviews like this, whatever we can do. And if anybody that's out there right now has any suggestions, or is part of a neighborhood organization that does email newsletters, it'd be great to know about it.
Kate, did you have a question?
One of the concerns I have had, Jim, generally across the country is the impact of college disruptions on their voting. I mean, University Hall used to be one of my precincts, and I wonder, with students spread out, maybe engaging from home, what that has looked like, if you know.
Yeah, that's a real concern of mine too, particularly because students move around and they tend to only vote in presidential elections, and they end up, and UVA students should be pretty smart, right? But a whole lot of UVA students do not realize there is a difference between the city of Charlottesville and the county of Albemarle. And so they move and they move and they go, well, my address is Charlottesville. They don't realize they moved from the county to the city, or the city to the county. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. And I reached out last week to the Cavalier Daily and to the Dean of Students office to try to figure out how we can get communications out to those living on grounds, those living off grounds but in town or in the county, and those that didn't come back that are doing things.
Or in the quarantine dorms.
So
Yeah.
you should know that we have been working with UVA, my little subversive group, the Protect the Vote group, Abigail, Sonia and company. Anyway, we have been working with the student. Tim Hafey connected us to them to try to help with their communications, because what we found is that in other elections, they've given bad information to students, which has made it even, worse than it is to start with. So we've been working with them for a few weeks, and we have edited all of their communications. So maybe we should, there's something we should add.
Who actually are you working with on that?
Hannah.
College students?
Yeah, Hannah. Yeah, Tim Hafey, we tried to get Alan Groves to, we thought he was in charge. Tim said, no, this is a student-run thing.
Well, as I say, I reached out to them. I just got a communication from a reporter at the Cavalier Daily that she wants to talk about it. She has a deadline of 5 p.m. tomorrow. Thanks for telling me now. So I'm hoping that she will interview me while I am driving through Hampton Road Bridge Tunnel, try to get back to Charlottesville, if I have cell phone coverage. Anyway, we're gonna try. I haven't gotten a word back from the Dean of Students office, but that's something I really want to work on because
I'll ask Sonia to reach out to you.
I mean, I guess the question I had too, Jim, if someone is opting for virtual and they're back home in Texas, but they're registered on grounds, I don't even know what they should do.
Yeah, no, it's messy.
that's a tough one. They probably should register for Texas because they no longer have a domicile in Charlottesville or Albemarle since they didn't come back, unless they still have a rent agreement or something like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of kids here, so we need to move on. I think we could probably talk about this election for especially if everybody got a glass of wine, we could be here for hours.
Well, I noticed you had a nice, what kind of red is that you have there?
Oh, that's a French red. It's lovely.
Let me give you all my phone number if I can, because if you can think of things, once again, neighborhood associations or anything else that has newsletters that we can get the word out. My home phone number, and I'm working pretty much full time on elections now until after November 3rd. My home number is 434-293-3514. And I would love to hear from you, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. You're great. So Andy, where's Andy?
I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye, hon. So several people, we're going to try to make this real quick because I feel bad that we've kept Brad going, but everybody is kind of, at one point or other said, what the hell's going on with the Georgetown Hydraulic apartments? So Andy, who's there, right in the center of my screen is Andy. Andy is here and he's going to give us an update on this piece of property and what they're trying to do with it. So go for it, hon.
Hi, everyone. Like Cynthia said, my name is Andy Breidelbach, and I am a senior planner in the planning division. And I am reviewing a site plan for the property right there at the intersection of Georgetown and Hydraulic, which I know is a very visible piece of property in your community. So Michaela asked me to come and give just a brief presentation to the CAC on this project and where it stands. So like I said, it's a final site plan for a project that is known, the applicant is calling it the Georgetown Hydraulic Professional Offices. So this is just a brief location map showing the property. It's right there at the Georgetown Hydraulic intersection. In the schools, as you can see, is up to the top of the screen, Hydraulic and Georgetown, and then the Georgetown Green Development is kind of behind the subject property. So this is just another aerial view showing what it looks like now. It's just a parcel with some woods on it right at the intersection. This is a street level view from Google Street View, just showing what it looks like standing there in the middle of the Georgetown and Hydraulic intersection. So this is just a brief rundown of the specifics of this project. The property is just over an acre in size. Like I mentioned, it's currently vacant. It is zoned NMD Neighborhood Model District with overlay districts of the entrance corridor and the airport impact overlay. And so just a brief history of this parcel is that back in 2008, the Board of Supervisors at that time approved a rezoning from C1, which is commercial, to the neighborhood model district to permit an office development. So right now it is a by right office development that is going through the site plan review process, and it is following both an approved application plan and an approved code of development that were approved by the board as a part of that NMD rezoning back in 2008. And then an important part of this development as well is that as part of that rezoning, there was a proffered improvement to one of the bus stops in the area. And so the applicant will be adding a covered bus shelter to the stop that is on Georgetown Road on the west side. So on the same side of Georgetown is this parcel, and just down Georgetown from the intersection with Hydraulic. So this is just an overview of the zoning of the properties. As you can see, it's actually quite a wide mix of different zoning districts in this area, with the subject parcel there in the center is NMD. There's several residential districts all around. There's commercial both across the street and adjacent to it. And then there are actually a few parcels to the south that are zoned rural areas. And so the next few slides are just some elevations from both the Architectural Review Board application as well as the site plan application. So this is one of the elevations looking at it from the south. If you were standing kind of in Georgetown Road, what the building is proposed to look like. And I will say that the Architectural Review Board and the ARB staff planners did issue a certificate of appropriateness for this project a few weeks ago on August 20th. So they have gotten approval from the ARB. This is what it looks like if you're standing in Hydraulic Road looking at the more northern wing of the building. And then this is a section view if you're looking at it from the north. So Hydraulic Road would be on the left. It's a 3-story building, but because of the way the property is, it's really only 2 stories above grade, which are both proposed to be offices. And then the 1 story that is below grade is actually really mainly parking underneath there. They have some space for bike racks, and then there is some storage space as well. And then the main parking lot is there on the right. And then on the far right is some wooded area, which according to the application plan is preserved woods. So this is the site layout plan from the site plan. The Hydraulic Georgetown intersection is down in the bottom right. The building, I know it's kind of hard to see, there's a lot going on in this, on this plan. The building is kind of here in the center. There is a sidewalk along Hydraulic in Georgetown, which they're expanding to about 10 feet in width with a 3.5-foot grass strip separating Hydraulic from the sidewalk. There is parking that's kind of down in the middle. And then on the right, the gray areas, and then down in the, on the left, the gray areas, and then down on the bottom left are areas that, according to the application plan, are designated as conservation and preservation areas where the trees and the woods in that area are being preserved and are not being cut down. So that kind of acts as a buffer between the office development and then the residential areas to the west and the southwest. And then the only entrance to the property, since of course traffic is a major concern here at the Georgetown Hydraulic intersection, it's only a right-in, right-out entrance. That is all that VDOT would allow them to have to get into this development. And so that is at the very northeast of the property, about as far as they could get from the Georgetown Hydraulic intersection. And so it's just a right in, right out with an island, a triangular island there in the middle, preventing any left turns from occurring. So the project status is, as I mentioned, the ARB did approve the certificate of appropriateness for this back on August the 20th. And so the final step is getting the final site plan approved. All reviewers have granted their preliminary approval, so that includes planning, zoning, transportation planning, VDOT, engineering, the service authority, and fire rescue. The final reviews are underway, just making sure that everyone's plans and comments have all been addressed and are included in the final plan correctly. And so final approval of this plan is expected in the next couple of weeks, after which the applicant can pull building permits and start the construction process for this project. So I'm available for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm very actually happy to hear that you're doing only the right turn in and the right turn out. That is such a busy right lane. Coming from Albemarle High School, my experience is most of the traffic is there to go down Georgetown. And so there's a lot of traffic along there. You can never make a left turn out of there without risking an accident. So that's good to know. So that was sort of one of my major concerns about the project.
Yeah, no, that's great. Diane, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say this project is a good example of a project that the Board of Supervisors have been frustrated about, and we have been discussing this, not the specific project, but how it came about. And we'll be looking at maybe having this as part of our legislative packet. The problem is that we have projects that when they were approved in 08 or 04 or 06 were maybe appropriate for the location. But now, based on the changes that have happened, we have some projects that are older than 12 years that are now by right because they were approved such a long time ago. And we never have the opportunity to even address the changes in the traffic, the changes in the area. So this is a by right project. It was approved back in, I think Andy said 2008. I don't have a problem with it other than I would have liked to have had the opportunity for it to come to the board and see if we couldn't address some of the infrastructure that has changed since it was approved. To be honest with you, I wasn't sure that VDOT was even going to approve it because of the entrances. But having said that, I don't want to take up a lot of time. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure Andy.
Corey had a question.
Yeah.
I just had one quick question, and that is, have they addressed, just out of curiosity, if you want to go to this building and you are coming from 29 on Hydraulic, where do they want you to make that turn to get in to be able to then take the right? Where do they want that U-turn? And have they addressed when you come back out, on the flip side of it, if you're going back to the airport, have they addressed where they want you to make that U-turn as well?
That was not specifically addressed as a part of the site plan. That's kind of, I think, part of what Diantha was talking about, is that with it being approved so long ago, we can't really go back now and look at how those specific movements would be addressed. Really only up to VDOT to approve their entrance and make sure that the entrance works as smoothly as possible.
We know it can't.
The expectation is that there will be U-turning going on. So
Yeah, it'll have to be a U-turn.
Careful,
Like,
right.
where is the U-turn going to be?
That's right. It's concerning.
Okay, on that happy note. We're
Wait,
gonna
John
ask
Lewis here. I have
Diantha
one
to
question.
Find out for us where the U-turns will be.
I can certainly follow up with VDOT or the.
That would be great. Tell VDOT that it was a horrible meeting because we screamed and yelled at you and wanted to know where the hell those U-turns were going to be.
John has a question, Cynthia. John Lewis.
Oh, John.
Hey, everyone. Sorry I joined late. Will there be lane closures during the construction?
I believe so. That is also something that's really up to VDOT to determine in their traffic management review. And so that's actually something else I can follow up with VDOT to see if they can provide more information on what sorts of closures or that sort of thing will occur once construction begins for this.
Well, that would be great. That'd be great. Okay, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to see Brad Sheffield. but it'll be even more fun to hear about him and what the hell he's up to.
Good evening. I think Michaela has my presentation to share with y'all.
Yes, just putting it up.
You can always count on Michaela.
1 second.
Jaunt on demand.
All right.
Yep.
Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So this evening, we wanted to just give the CAC an update on the initiative related to Jaunt's on-demand project. I have a few slides I'll go over that kind of gives you a little bit of context of what this project is shaping up to be, and really talk about what the role the CAC is hopefully going to play as we move forward. So on the next slide, we're obviously making the rounds to try to get the communication going and discussion about the project. It's important as we pool the technology and the parameters of what we're going to offer together, that we reflect what we're hearing from the community about what their ideas and needs and just optimism is about this type of service delivery. So on the next slide, I'll jump right into offering you an idea of what we mean when we talk about on-demand services. First, I should say that this type of concept, as I describe it, will seem very familiar to what we already provide at Jaunt. And it's because the way Jaunt provides services and how unique it is really compared to its peers across the state and even nationally, this is really not a big jump for us. It's more of a slight evolution of where we're headed with the types of services that we want to provide and how we want to be able to provide those quickly. So focusing pretty much on the customer is really what on-demand is about. And when I talk about that, it's really around the concept of when and where people need services, the cost of those services, and then the availability. And so getting into the when and where, on-demand is not just about developing a schedule and pushing it out and telling people, this is what we offer. Do you want it? Great. Okay, schedule a trip. It's really about giving people the ability to request those services when they need them and where they need them, and have Jaunt be able to quickly respond to those. If we don't offer it today, based on that on-demand, that immediate access to the type of information, the request coming in, we can put that service out tomorrow. And so this type of approach allows us to be that responsive. From a cost standpoint, it's a bit odd to talk about it now because with Jaunt and CAT being fare free with the pandemic, we're not quite sure where that's headed into the future. So I'll just share that with this on-demand platform approach, we can be very, I guess, customized in how we look at how we charge fares and the cost. We want to make sure that the customers just don't have to worry about where and how to get to their locations and even have to worry about what to pay. If there are different programs or different types of services that they're eligible for, and that helps cover the cost, that's what this type of platform will answer for them almost immediately. And the last piece being immediate availability. That's not just around when it's available, but it's around what type of availability that they would need. So if we're looking and seeing that there's a spike in demand in the evenings because CAT services are reduced and there's the need for people to get from their jobs back home, that's where we want to make that immediate availability of services to crop up and meet those expectations. So with any kind of project that I try to pull together, I try to come up with some guiding principles. It's kind of like those rail posts to make sure that you stay on focus on where you're headed. And being a transportation person, I of course like my acronyms. And so I came up with a combination of the two. And it spells out rides, but it actually is meant to convey a few things that are important to Jaunt and as well as to this project. One is being responsive is important. Being responsive to what the customers want, what the community wants, and just in general, how things are changing. And I think the best example to give is with the pandemic, we saw an immediate shift to the need for people looking for food security to access those resources. Food banks, they all had come together. They were able to provide that resource, but lo and behold, transportation does create a barrier for someone seeking that and be able to access it. That's where we want to be able to be responsive, to be able to quickly put something in place that actually meets those needs. And of course, with the next one, it's at the core of Jaunt's existence since 1975, and it's being inclusive. We want to make sure whatever we offer is going to be able to meet everybody's needs, and not just from a service standpoint. It's extremely important that even the technological platform that we're using is going to be able to be used by anybody else that has a disability, or even not even a smartphone. We want to be able to have them call in to be able to access the same kind of service. As far as being dynamic, this is where this type of approach allows us to look at layering the different types of partnerships and services that could exist. And through that layering of these types of approaches, it really simplifies what's available to a customer. If you look at what Jaunt offers right now, it's really confusing. You don't know if you're eligible to ride from the rural area into the urban, within the urban area. What about the commuter service? It is quite a bit of service that we offer. We want to simplify that with the platform, but we still want to expand all of those potential dynamic relationships that might exist. One of my favorite principles that I've put together is that empowering. One of the things that this does is kind of what Uber and Lyft and a lot of those ride-sharing companies have kind of shook up transportation about, and that is they put the power of requesting the trip in the hands of the consumer. So I want to continue down that and make sure that we're always empowering those customers, those passengers, with the right information when they make the request, the right information to make a request on, and just to make sure that we're meeting their needs in a satisfactory way. And then finally, one of the other principles is kind of a bedrock of transit in general, and that is safety. I think this is where we're seeing the private sector kind of struggle with meeting this expectation, but the public side doesn't. We're held to pretty high safety standards. And so we want to make sure we continue that and communicate it, that this type of service is going to remain safe, just as safe as any other normal transit services. So on the next slide, it's really talking about what I call the convergence of opportunities. As I started to talk about this, I started to get a lot of questions about where else is this being done? I really struggled with that answer for a little while, but what I started to realize is when I looked at this type of platform, I saw something very different than my transit peers. And I'll give you the context of my transit peers, and that is most of them have a problem. They need to get seniors to shopping, they need to get late night students back home safely, whatever it might be. So they go out and find a solution, usually a technological solution, and On-Demand offers that. For me, I saw On-Demand as something that offered a range of possibilities. And so the platform was more of a tool to harvest those possibilities. And so when we started talking about this more and more, of course, a handful of them started coming up and fairly common, but I don't believe that this is a catch-all list. I believe that there's opportunities that just haven't come up yet. Of course, connecting people with jobs is very important. The city's economic development office, as well as Ride to Work, partnered with us and CAT to submit for a TANF grant, a grant to help make transit fare free. Of course, that's a little bit of a limbo thing right now, but the main purpose of the grant was to connect people who couldn't typically use transit to jobs by using transit. And so for us at Jaunt, that really means that we can use this type of platform to go beyond what normal transit is offering as far as connections to jobs. And so we'll be continuing to work with Ride to Work to identify those kind of needs. Of course, aiding in transit growth is a huge component. In a way, if you think about like out towards Mill Creek and some other areas where there are emerging possible needs, On-Demand really helps us identify what types of transit services would be great for them to use and what infrastructure is needed to make them shift from something like On-Demand to more like fixed route. So I think it could really help us tease out where the interest is in the community for transit and what kind of transit they would need. Looking at agencies, one that I think applies most to this CAC is Loaves and Fishes. This is one of the springboard projects that I believe we're going to be putting in place that we're going to work with them to broaden what we can do beyond just what Jaunt does now. And what I mean is helping them connect their clients to the food bank through just setting up different types of services at different types of day to to make sure that they have that access that they need, that typical transportation modes and even transit can't provide now. Some of the other stuff is transit connectivity and employer partnerships. And what I mean by transit connectivity, it's really filling the gap in between maybe somebody in a suburban area that wants to ride transit, but really can't walk to that transit stop. And so in a way, this could help connect them to a hub, and then that hub is along a backbone to where they can finish the trip from there. And in a way that kind of relates to employer partnerships, because we want to find a way to help incentivize the employers in the area and other emerging employers to kind of push or kind of herd their employees towards using multimodalism instead of just being car dependent. An example of that is the partnership with WillowTree, Albemarle, and Woolen Mills, to where John will be working to create this type of relationship to get those WillowTree employees from Woolen Mills to downtown, but more importantly to WillowTree now is to get them from their homes to Woolen Mills so they don't even have to park downtown. So those are just a handful of the possible opportunities, but without a doubt, there's plenty more that have come up and that keep coming up. And so we're going to keep having these discussions to make sure that people have an opportunity to start thinking about it and come to us and start talking about what we could do as far as when we're implementing this platform. So what really comes to the importance of the CAC is pretty much a little statement on the next slide. Is just planning ahead. I think it's really important to understand that whenever we go after any type of funding or even implementing any type of project, it is very important that these type of projects exist in the plans of the locality, in this case with the county. So we're talking about the comp plan, the section of the transportation plan, any of the plans that are coming together. It is super important that this type of concept gets in there, because we are able to point to that when we go after anything else. Again, whether it's funding or other partnerships, we can say the county wants this. See, this is where it is in your plan. So we're going to be coming back to you as we're moving forward with this to help kind of talk about how to get it into some of y'all's plans so that we can make sure that it has that foundation to build from. So with that, I'll take any questions, and I will add that one of the things that I hated the most about running for office is you touched on elections, and so I have to say this is I hated repeating myself time after time as I was knocking on doors, and I had to say the same thing time after time. I hated it. I don't like repeating myself. This presentation is one of those ones where I've got to keep repeating myself and not try to deviate too much. So I know Julian's heard this presentation already, as well as Diantha and some others. So if I've missed something, please don't hesitate to say so, because I sometimes kind of leave a few things out because I've already said them in another meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Brad, I will tell you that you're a person who is into continuous improvement, because I will say that this actually, your presentation just now was actually built upon the one that you gave to the Planning Commission. So
thank you.
That was very good, I should say.
Can I just add one that I would ask you to kind of keep in mind? I don't know where the opportunity is, but it's like when you mentioned loaves and fishes, you know, we're looking at the privilege and honor of actually having a Boys and Girls Club being built on the campus there. And at some point, you know, I mean, like, you know, one of the things that keeps a lot of kids from participating in after school stuff is, you know, transportation. So, you know, at some point, you know, if we could, you know, tie in the kids at the Boys and Girls Club, that might be cool. So it was something we could do to help them.
Cynthia makes a really good point, and Brad and I have talked numerous times about when we talk about loaves and fishes, and Brad, maybe I should let you do this so you can jump in and correct me, but we're talking about an area. And so when we're talking about a pilot, we're going to start with the loaves and fishes, but that also includes, that area includes the Lambs Lane campus, which is what you're getting at, Cynthia.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And it's pretty exciting because of the Boys and Girls Club. But we also have parents over on the Lambs Lane campus. Tony is at Albemarle High School, but we have parents that are trying to get to Greer and even to Jewett at times, and to pick up a sick child, to do whatever, to get to a PTO meeting. And this could be an opportunity for that campus as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So that'd be good. Were you trying to say something, Kim?
Yeah, it's a great presentation, Brad. So with thinking about not the little younger kids, but like the high school and even the community college, is there going to be an opportunity like with our tech centers at the high school level to maybe help with getting kids who might find an internship, or even at the community college where they might find an internship that would help them use that service? Is that where this would be going?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say that don't limit your imagination to just jaunt going from A to B and carrying somebody. Part of this concept is a much broader approach of multimodalism or multi-modes, in the sense that somebody like that may be able to use this type of service to get to a transit hub and then take CAT or even UTS or some other mode the rest of the way. Or maybe they are able to take this type of service, connect with an e-bike or whatever it might be. The whole goal is to kind of fill in this one missing piece of what we see as immediate kind of on-demand service with an array of mode options that are kind of linked together. And what I envision in the future is that we will see where you'll say, I want to go from A to B, and this platform is going to show you 5 different options that are open to you that, weigh whether it's convenience, economics, reliability, whatever it might be, and you can kind of base it on that. So those type of kids and users really would have a variety of options based on the time of day and how they're wanting to get there.
Cool. Anybody else?
Is John doing anything with the elections, getting people to the polls or anything?
Yeah, we always run into a challenge with that because of capacity. It's hard to figure it out. This time we're not struggling with capacity. A good number of our vehicles are parked right now. So my public relations director is working on the information to get out to remind people that we can take them from home to the polls and to how to do that. So I think we're gearing up this time to get those extra vehicles out of the road to meet these needs. This is probably the one year that we feel like it won't cause a rippling effect throughout the rest of the services, that we actually can step up pretty significantly.
I would echo why that's really important. And many of you know that we've had this Cars to Vote program run by a bunch of women that have done here. They're not doing it this year because of COVID. Their drivers were not. At the UVA campus, as some people I've been working with are paying to put vans there to shuttle the kids around to the polls. But other than that, we're already worrying about, a lot of senior citizens and other people. How are they going to get to the polls? So, John.
Well, I believe we'll be putting out a special phone number for people to be able to make those kind of reservations. So I'll get that out to all of y'all once we get it established. It's meant to be very specific to track those who are making those requests so that they're getting a little bit of that special attention on the type of trip that they need.
Cool. I think John Lewis, did you have a question, hon?
Yeah, hi. This is more, I guess it's the younger generation question, which is there a plan or does something exist or a strategy around having a regional public transportation app which collects or coordinates the various, jaunt, CATs, whatever other publicly provided services are out there, so that you have one place to go to and you can see where the buses are, you can see if the jaunt you reserved, what have you, is, their current schedule and timing. So I don't know if there's a strategy for an app that makes it easier for you to engage with the CATs and jaunt.
Yeah, most of the platforms that exist for offering some sort of on-demand come with that multi-mode integration. So that is something that we'll be moving forward with. I have separated the two concepts in my discussions because they do kind of get a little bit confusing when I'm talking about them in the same conversation. But because you asked, yes, we are working towards that. It means that we'll be having some in-depth conversations with UTS, CAT, and any other mode, even Uber and Lyft and the taxis and so forth. Any mode that pushes out their software, information is definitely something we can bring into that type of platform. So that probably is something you'll see fairly quickly after on-demand is up and going and we've worked out any kind of kinks or bugs in that.
That's amazing.
Great,
That's
thanks.
I'll just add that, John, we have, and Brad is aware of this too because he's part of it, we've had these discussions at the Regional Transit Partnership that we need to really work together so that this is seamless for the riders.
Well, thank you so much, Brad.
Fantastic, thank you.
It was great seeing you and hearing from you. You're very busy.
It was great to see y'all too.
Yeah, thank you so much, though. Really appreciate it. We've only got exactly 4 minutes left, so you know, Diantha and Julian, if you have words of wisdom, just talk fast.
You want to go first? You want me to start?
I don't have anything that's just worth displacing those 2 minutes.
I just have a couple of things. I want to just remind everybody of the importance of making sure your census is completed. If you haven't done your census, we really need it because it's going to depend on the school funding is one of the things that's a beneficiary of the school census. So please make sure you've completed yours. And I would like to just say, while I have Kate here, you're talking about the whole harmless, the legislation possibly for the General Assembly. If you'll get with the Board of Supervisors, we'll be glad to, I'm sure, support you with that. We just need to make sure we coordinate that. And then I would love to have your presentation, Kate, to share. And other than that, I'm good unless somebody has a question.
Anybody? Well, I think we're like to the minute. Anyway.
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
John here, just very briefly. I met with Tom Helidino from the Parks and Rec Service, and we were talking about the trails behind AHS system. And so I'm probably going to be kicking that, like trying to understand if we wanted to put a trail plan into that area, who to work with. Is it the parks? Is it the school board? So maybe at our next CAC meeting, I can, I'll have something more concrete to just discuss to try and understand what the right process is and to improve the trail system back there to allow the kids to run and bike during school hours or after school hours, but then make it a park after school hours.
Wow.
And
Thanks,
John,
everyone.
really good point. And I would say as part of that discussion, we really should coordinate them because they're going to be putting in the pipeline behind the school. That's a great area for trails, right? To go right over it. We talked about that early on when we were approving that route for that pipeline. And while that's a ways away, we really ought to talk about it in conjunction. The two should be tied together.
Thank you for bringing that up, Diantha, because there was a presentation I saw elsewhere where the RWSA is proceeding with the plan, and I was asking how and who do we work with in order to try and get trail access over that right of way as it goes through private property. Is that part of the easement negotiations, or is that something that we can participate in to get it done early as RWSA is working with the property owners? Because I see that as a real opportunity for trail connectivity between all these different areas. So I don't know what the process is and who to talk to or where to start with that.
So we'll work on that and get that to this group as part of the presentation, and we'll bring in someone from the RSW in schools, and we'll see if we can't get that as an agenda item. That would be really great.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so our next meeting is October 19th at 5:30. Blah, 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 blah. There's more blah, blah, blah. Maybe Michaela will have recorded this so we don't have to write it down. But basically, I think we're about ready to adjourn the meeting, and I'm going to go get another glass of wine. I hope everyone votes early and often. And thanks so much for participating. This was a great meeting.
Great meeting. Thank you, guys. It was really good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kate, for coming.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.